back to my channel, Living. Today I just wanted to do an advice video on living alone. I wanted to make this just a casual talk with you guys for those of you who want to start living alone, that are in college or are considering getting an apartment instead of dorming, or for those of you that are about to move into your first apartment alone with a roommate or by yourselves. I just wanted to make this advice video, and at the end I want to share something really scary that happened to me when I lived alone, and hopefully it will help you guys be more thoughtful as you proceed into this new journey in your life. My living situation: I'm currently not in college. I've graduated and I'm working a full-time job. I've been working a full-time for about since 2017. It's 2020 now, so for 3 years now I've been out of school. And throughout college I dormed. Freshman, sophomore year I dormed, and then junior year I dormed half a year, and then the other half I decided to get an apartment. So I had an apartment for half of junior year, senior year, and then all the way up until September of 2018, I think. So 16, 17, 18. So I had an apartment for 3 years, sort of living on my own because my family didn't live in the States. They left to another state when I started my sophomore year of college, and so that's sort of my living situation and everything. And I decided to get an apartment and leave out of my dorm midway junior year because I went to school in Atlanta, Georgia, and it was pretty pricey dorming. I think it was $5,000 or more per semester, and I calculated it somehow, and I saw that dorming, actually I'd have leftover money having an apartment instead of dorming. So I decided to do that, and then when I withdrew from dorming, I actually got some money back, and I started having an apartment from there. And I didn't get an apartment in Atlanta because apartments in Atlanta were very expensive. It was practically the same as dorming, so I got an apartment in another city closer to where all my friends were, and then I commuted to Atlanta through the transit system, MARTA. So I gave up being able to sleep more in order to get an apartment. I really wanted an apartment to have some freedom in my own space, and I was willing to give up being able to sleep another hour or two for that. So that sort of was my situation. I saved money, and I got the ability I got more space, my own space, and more freedom by not dorming in school, but I lost sleep time essentially. So that's sort of my living background. And on that note, for those of you that do want to get an apartment instead of dorming, just consider where you want to get your apartment. If it's gonna be the same price, maybe dorming might be better, because dorming you don't have to worry about paying the utilities separately every month. It's just all in your dorming fee. And then maybe your dorming comes with a meal plan or not. Just consider what city you're planning to get your apartment in before you decide that you'd rather have an apartment than a dorm. And in my case, my family didn't live in the state that I went to school in, so I had to make these decisions. But if your family lives in the state that you go to school in, I know that a lot of us want to immediately leave and get our own place and be free from the restraints of our parents. But in the long run, it's more cost efficient if you just stay at home and finish those 4 years, and then after you get a good, a good job, you can decide to branch out. Then I don't think college is the beginning of your life. I mean, it's a continuation of your life, but your life really starts once you start getting out there after you graduate and looking for a job and what you really want to do with your life. So I wouldn't be so quick to start to move out of your parents' home, because you could save a lot of money by just living at home, and you wouldn't have a bunch of debt in the future after you graduate to worry about with the rest of your life, So those are some things to consider before deciding to get an apartment instead of dorming or instead of living with your parents. Next, I want to talk about how to security proof your place or your apartment. So with my roommates, it was like with my first apartment where I had a bunch of roommates. I never felt unsafe because I had a lot of guy friends, and who would want to go break into a place with a bunch of guys everywhere. So the security was never an issue there. And then in my second apartment, my roommates were females. So there was this one creepy guy who would always hit on us, and it wasn't that much of an issue, but I guess I have multiple scary stories to tell. But one day I was home alone and my roommates were at work, and I just get this knock on my door at like late in the night, and I go to it, and I'm like, I can't see well who it is in the hole, but I can see a figure, and it's a guy, and I'm like, who is it? And I think he goes like, it's Prince, and I'm just behind my door like, I think you have the wrong person or the wrong apartment. And then they mumble something, and then they just kind of disappear, but I'm kind of like creeped out, at that point. And I call my roommates and I'm freaked out, but I calm down, the door's locked, and I'm just like, okay, it's gonna be fine. But I think I ended up just driving to my roommates and leaving the apartment because I was so scared. And then the creepy thing is, I left my apartment the next day, it was daylight. And then that creepy guy who always talks to us just came over to me and was like, hey, my name is Prince. I have no idea what he was thinking, because it was like he was telling me I was the creepy guy that came to your apartment. Did he think I would let him, like I was a booty call or something, and would let a strange man into my apartment? I don't know what he was so proud of to tell me his name. I guess he thought he had game or something. But that's my first terrifying situation living alone that happened. And then along with all that, you hear gunshots from time to time. I never really got that scared by the gunshots. I know I should be more terrified, but I wasn't that scared of hearing gunshots sometimes, because unless you live in like an A+ apartment, like a really expensive apartment, I don't know if gunshots is not a thing. I just always heard it, and I never got scared of that part. But yeah, so that was my first creepy experience living alone, and we just kind of stuck it out together. But my roommates did have issues in that apartment with their cars. One of my roommates got her car radio just like stolen. They broke into her car and just took her car radio. And then my other roommate, like, people were smoking cigars and put out the buds on her car. Nothing ever happened to my car, surprisingly, and I'm really grateful for that, but I feel really bad that happened to them. So that's another thing to consider when moving into an apartment. And the weird thing is, that apartment that I lived in with those girls, like, it had like 4 stars. So I guess reviews can't help you decide on everything, but that was probably the most unsafest apartment complex that I lived in out of the 3. Is when I lived alone in my 3rd apartment. I was really careless at first, but then some things started happening that made me really terrified. So my parents came to visit one time, and my dad installed I think it's called a deadbolt lock. He installed like a okay, he installed a keychain door lock onto my front door, because my front door only had like a bottom lock, I think, which is safer than just the top lock, but it had a bottom lock. And then I was really creeped out and scared, and so when my parents came to visit, my dad installed a chain lock for me, and that's one way you can make yourself feel safer. You just have to remove it when you move out. The hole in the door might be an issue, but you could talk to your apartment management about that. I just didn't care. So my dad installed the chain lock, and that made me feel much safer. And then another thing I did was, it's crazy how I lived alone in a one bedroom apartment, but I had like 3 entrances into my apartment: the front door, the balcony door, and then there was another sliding door in my room. So there are 3 entrances into my 1 bedroom apartment where I lived alone, which is crazy. So Amazon sells these, and I've heard some of my friends had security alarms in their apartments. None of my apartments in Georgia ever had alarm systems in them, but when my friend lived in Tennessee, her apartment had like a security system installed, like an alarm system installed, which was perfect. If you don't have one, and you don't want to buy, like, install like a real one because you know you're broke or not rich or whatever, you can go on Amazon and they sell these loud alarms, and you can stick them sort of with these command strips that they come with, and you can stick them anywhere you want, like on your windows, on your doors, and so essentially it's like your door's like this, and then you put like each of the alarm items on each side, and anytime like the 2 alarm pieces are not close to each other and you pull it apart, like the door opens or the window opens and they separate, it will make a crazy loud like alarm, like a super loud squeaky like whistling alarm sound, like really loud. And those aren't real alarms, like it's not gonna call anybody if those ring, but if a robber or someone breaking into your apartment hears that noise, they're gonna be immediately freaked out and they might run away. You know, it's a means of protection by scaring them and, you know, making them think it's a real alarm. So I think that's another alternative you could try if you don't have an alarm system in your apartment. Like those sort of fake alarms that are really loud, and then installing a chain on your front door. I think I would have felt safer if I installed the chain on my balcony door, but I put the alarm, like I had an alarm on every single door: the balcony door, the sliding door in my room, the front door had a sort of like it was less of a loud alarm, but more of like someone's at your house alarm, and it was a really cool system where I could adjust like whatever song I wanted. So that's what I had on my front door. It was a little more of like a cute alarm, and then on the balcony door and then my sliding door in my room, which really made me nervous, I had like the loud alarm on those. So those are some safety measures you can take when living alone that are inexpensive and can really make you feel better. Another thing is be smart and cautious. I'm not an idiot, but for some reason in my 3rd apartment I lived on the bottom floor by myself, and it was, you know, my cat likes to sit on the window. There was a really big window in the living room, not huge, but you know, big, and there was a big little piece for her to, like a big spot for her to just sit, and she always liked to do that. And then whenever the blinds were down, she would have to squat down, and I felt bad. I was like, oh no, my cat's gonna get scoliosis or something. So I always raised it up just a little bit, enough for her to sit, and I was really chill. Like I would come home from work and it would be like dark outside, and I would just leave those blinds up and let her sit there and stare out into the darkness, and then I would just watch TV in my living room. And sometimes I would even come home from work or just, you know, to be tired and nap on my living room couch with that window blinds like halfway, like, you know, sort of up. And I was never scared, never cared, until this certain incident happened, and I realized you really need to be cautious. Don't be too comfortable. Like, I'm not an idiot, but for some reason I was just so careless with that. And the worst thing is my window was facing like the trees, not even the parking lot. It was facing the trees, like in the back area where like the the garbage can, usually like the big garbage disposal area is. So I was just very careless in that area. I would, even no matter how comfortable you are, how safe you feel you are, be like more cautious and with these things. Like I should have just left the blinds down no matter what, or I should have just left them up when the day, like it was sunny outside. Like I should never have left them up when it's like dark outside, no matter how carefree I felt. Be careful with like those things. Like don't be so careless. Be more cautious with your decisions when you live alone, especially if you don't have any roommates. Another thing you can consider when living alone is to get a pet. If this is your first time on your own, and you know you finally left your parents' place, or your parents don't live in the state with you, and you finally have your own place, I recommend getting a pet if you've always wanted one. I finally got a cat in my first apartment. I finally got a cat, and then when I finally lived all alone with no roommates, having her around made me feel much safer, even though I was terrified sometimes. Or just coming home from work and she would come out to greet me, or I would hear her bell on her leash, on her collar. It would just reassure me like, okay, everything's fine. Your cat's like here to hold down the fort. Even though she's like a 10, like super tiny, like a scaredy cat that only weighs like 10 pounds. Like it reassures you knowing that there's another, living being there, knowing that your cat is there to greet you every day when you come home, So I recommend getting a cat, or a dog, especially, would probably make you feel much safer living alone. And like not only for your safety, but you'll feel less lonely. You'll have another family member there with you, and it would just make you feel less lonely when your family is not there, or your friends aren't there, or your significant other's not there all the time. Laundry. In all three of my apartments, I never had a washer and dryer, and when I finally got one again, I was so happy. Like, it's just, like, I already don't want to do my laundry when I have a washer and dryer, but then when you don't have one at all, you just never want to do it. And so, some tips on this, if you've never, like, been in this situation or gotten an apartment or your own place before, is apartment complexes offer like rentals, washer and dryer rentals, but I was broke and like much younger at that time, so I didn't want to rent anything and have to pay for it every month, like a washer and dryer, and it wasn't like cheap either. So I decided to just go to the laundry, like the laundromat every time in my first two apartments, because in my first two apartments, there's an area next to the office that had a washer and dryer, but there wasn't a lot of them. There were just a few machines. Like in total, there were 3 washers and 3 dryers. Like that was so little, so I never went to those. But then in my third apartment, when I lived alone, conveniently I lived right next to the front office, and they had a lot of washers and dryers, and it took card. That was just amazing, and I really, that was perfect. So when looking for apartments, if that's something to consider if you want an apartment with a washer and dryer already in it, which would probably make the cost of your apartment, it might be more. Or if you want to rent a washer and dryer from a company that your apartment complex refers, or consider if your apartment complex offers like a decent amount of washer and dryers for you to just use whenever you need to do laundry instead of having to go to the laundromat. Or if the laundromat's not a big issue for you, you don't mind just going there every month, then that's like something that would make choosing an apartment easier as well. Alright, so that's my list of advices for living alone. I'm sorry if I rambled a bit, but I wanted this to be more of like a casual talk about my experience. Let me know in the comments if you have any additional questions about living alone that I could answer for you. And now finally I'll tell you the really terrible story that happened to me. So I already talked about the first scary experience I ever had when it was just me and some of my female roommates living in my second apartment. But in my third apartment, where I lived completely alone on the bottom floor and where I was very careless and would leave the blinds up sometimes. So this time I actually put the blinds down, but the blinds were like the fancy big ones where they look like they were just there to be cute and for show. So they didn't really do their job and cover up everything completely. They just kind of closed it up a bit, you know, which is better than me leaving it a bit up like I usually do. But this one day, this night, I actually had my blinds down, and I was in the living room at like for the first few hours with my friend, and we were sort of doing exercises together, you know, like exercises here and there. And I was wearing a sports bra and like some leggings, and she was wearing some sports attire too, and we were just kind of working out a bit. And then she left, and then I kind of like knocked out. I was really tired, so I just like kind of knocked out on my living room couch like I usually do. And then I just covered my sports bra with like a blanket as I took a nap. And then it was like, I would say it was about 10 o'clock. So she had just, my friend had just left for a few hours, and it was like around 10 o'clock, and I was taking a nap, and I had something playing when I was taking a nap, but I think it was over, so it just kind of, the TV screen was just on, and my laptop was just up like halfway, but there was nothing playing. But I had just woken up from my nap like all frenzied, because I guess I heard something, and it like woke me up. And I heard like sort of like people talking or something at first. Like it sounded like mumbling, some type of noise. And then I was kind of confused. I was like, is it the neighbor? Like, is it my upstairs neighbors? Like, what is that noise? And then I was like, oh, it's probably my TV. So obviously there's nothing playing on my TV. Like, I use Chromecast where you can cast from your laptop to your TV. And there was obviously nothing playing, but I heard this noise and I had just woken up, so I was confused, and I closed my laptop. I was like, oh, I guess something's playing. Let me turn it off. And then I just kind of laid there in a daze, you know, still sleepy. And then I hear like this tap on my window. Like, my couch is right next to my big window, kind of like a few feet away, like not far at all, like. And I hear this tapping on my window, and it's like, it sounds, I can hear it so clearly, like someone is literally taking their finger and just like tapping, or like something. I just freaked out, and I immediately froze. And then I start to hear those mumbling noises again, and this time I clearly knew what it was. It was like porn. It was like the same, but it was weird. It was like the same clip or the same scene playing over and over and over again, and I could hear it so clearly. It was like the person that was tapping on my window was watching me while listening to this porn clip, and I was so terrified. And they just kept playing this clip over and over again, and then I just kept laying there, and then I heard that tapping on the window again. And I never considered myself someone that would be a deer in headlights ever. I thought I would be that person that, you know, when you're scared you get up and do something about it. No, I was a deer in headlights, laid frozen on that couch, and just let that crazy whoever was at my window keep knocking on my window and playing this weird porn clip. And I finally got the guts to pick up my phone, and I called 911. I stayed laid down, or I don't know what I did, but I called 911, and I told them the situation, and they were like, someone's coming as soon as possible. And I hung up, and then I called my boyfriend, who I had just started dating, and I told him about it. And I was like, I'm so scared. And then he was on his way to my place, and I think I just kept him on the phone the whole time while I was in my place, like just with me on the phone. And the weird thing is, I think I heard the tapping again. Like, I don't know if that person didn't, or the porn noise was playing again. I don't know if that person didn't care that I was calling the cops, or they didn't hear me. I don't know what was going on, but the cops finally came, and like their sort of like their little intercom was making noises, so I don't know if that person heard anything. But they knocked on my door, and I was like, who is it? And they didn't answer, which freaked me out even more. I don't know, I guess my door is too thick and they couldn't hear me, so I was really hesitant to open it. But I finally opened it because I heard their intercom, and I was like, this is probably the cops. And I opened it, and there was this male cop, and I told him about what I was scared about. He peeked over, he like walked around, peeked over in the backyard, and there was no one there. But he, you know, and then his partner came, and they just kind of checked out my place. I think I asked them if they could like stay in my apartment while I looked around because I was so paranoid. And they did, and they were like, that they said they'd be in the area and to let them know if it happens again. But that's how it ended, and they never found anyone. And my boyfriend got there and spent the night with me the rest of the night, but I was so terrified and shocked that that had happened. And I really regret that I was a deer in headlights. I wish I would have just got up and call the cops, and after I called, immediately get up and lift up that blind to see who was there. Like, I really regret it because now I'm so sure it happened. I can hear that tapping noise so clearly. But I'll never, really know who was there. And this was all before my dad installed the chain lock for me. And before I got those Amazon alarms and everything, and I was carelessly leaving my blinds up a bit, but that day it was down, but it didn't matter. So after that, like a few weeks after that, I was still super terrified. And my family didn't live there, and I was afraid to tell them because I didn't want them to worry, so I didn't tell anyone, and only my boyfriend and my friends knew. And I think my friends try to visit me more often because they knew I was scared. But I was so terrified, and that late at night I would hear bushes or people walking, taking out the trash, and I would just get up and sit for hours not sleeping because I was so terrified. And I've never felt so terrified to the point where I couldn't sleep and I had work the next day. It was just mentally such a stressor on me. And I would call my boyfriend sometimes, and he would be so sleepy he could barely talk to me, and we were new in our relationship, and I really didn't want to trouble him. It was just so mentally draining and stressful and just so horrible that I'm glad that I don't live alone anymore, but so I really regret it. I wish I didn't start doing it so early, and I wish I was more cautious before this all happened. And my apartment was so nice. My friends all thought it was so big and newly renovated. It was a really nice apartment, and I didn't think the apartment was that bad either, but that incident happened to me, and now for the rest of my life I'll always be way more cautious and careful if I ever live alone again. So I hope you if you're listening to this, I hope you take that into consideration and be more cautious and take measures to make your place more safe. So yeah, that's my horror story, and I'm still alive and everything, but I'll never know who was standing behind that window knocking and playing that creepy porn noise at me. So yeah. Hi, Ollie. Yeah, my kitty. My baby. My baby girl. She loves me when she feels like it. My name is Ari. Her name is Ari. Thank you for watching and listening to me ramble about some advice in my living alone horror story. Again, let me know in the comments if you have any other concerns, before moving out or getting your first apartment or just getting into college and not sure where you should live. Put comments and questions down below, and I'll answer them as best as I can. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more videos like this to come.
I guess you're back. Are you gonna tell me where you went? All the messages I sent with no reply. It's like that. You're just gonna walk into my room. I hate how you assume I'll take the pleasure and the pain.